What they soon realized was that God wanted them to become missionaries, and everything pointed to China, even the heavens.
My wife didn't tell me she was looking to China, but I was working in an office in London in those days, and I looked up at the sky, and the clouds were exactly the shape of a map of China, remarkably like. And so I took that to mean that God was going to take us to China, and that the war was starting at that time. So it wasn't a good time to travel, but we decided to go there.
But this young couple would soon learn that moving to China also meant they would have to postpone their upcoming nuptials.
That's so that the women would get the language before they started having families and so on.
So they spent the first year 1,000 miles apart as Dorothy studied the language. By the second year, she was able to move closer, this time only 4 hours apart. But finally, after being separated for over 2 years, marriage was permitted, and nothing, not even the war, was going to stop them.
Well, the Japanese were still bombing the capital of Yunnan province where we were, which was next to Burma. And so they only bombed certain times of the day. So after 3 o'clock you could be free to do anything. So we went to the British consulate at about 3:30 and had the legal wedding. And then the Christian one we had at the mission headquarters. And I think we had about 40 guests, but nobody we knew. The man who gave me away I had never met until I got to the capital there. But anyway, it was official and we were married.
They would spend the next 40 years in 3 different countries on the mission field, while raising 2 daughters along the way. And China, during World War II, would prove to be the most dangerous assignment.
The Japanese came and bombed our city, and the church was flattened, and the Christians all moved into the country. And the Japanese army had come right up close to the city, and everyone expected them to move into the city the next day. So we all left at dawn. And a senior missionary, an Australian lady, had fortunately received some money, and that kept all 5 of us for the next 5 months. We went up in the mountains and were completely cut off from the mission, from home, no mail, no message of any kind.
By the time the communists started taking over the country, they had moved back home for a while before being transferred to Canada, where they took a pastoral role, not knowing their next international stop would be Japan. They would spend the next 15 years of their lives teaching English, working at a seminary, and even starting a Chinese church for those who had escaped from China during the war. But it was also during this time that both Dorothy and William started writing, and in total they penned 8 books. But their lives as missionaries would end in their 80s in Germany, where they spent most of their years. And up until just a year ago, William was still writing messages that were translated by radio broadcasts all across Europe, something he still remembers clearly.
I was especially enthusiastic about the broadcast over the radio because it's the voice of one person. It doesn't need a building or a church hall. It just needs a voice.
After 40 years in missions, the Papes finally returned to their home in Canada to retire. But that wouldn't be the end to this love story.
I couldn't manage a house much longer. the garden was getting too much for him. He loves gardening.
So at nearly 90, they sold their home, and while in search of a place for both of them, they would be separated again.
When he needed more care, he went to Lynn Haven. That's much bigger. And we did get a single room there, but then I had to find someone to drive me there to visit him.
After so many years of marriage, it was hard to be apart, until finally an opening became available at another residence. So now, after 60 years of marriage and even more years in ministry, the Papes now call this senior residence home. Back under the same roof, the Papes now see each other every day. And even though their ailments have separated them from being in the same room, their love for each other is still apparent. And as for advice they might have for those looking for that special connection they've been able to keep for all of these years, Dorothy says it comes down to commitment.
Well, I think commitment is the main thing that's missing these days, isn't it? I think so many start out thinking, well, we can end it if we want. But we knew from the very beginning that God had brought us together. But it's not easy for people these days, I'm sure. But that is what it takes, isn't it?
That's what it has taken for this couple to last 66 years, and even as they go to their separate rooms, the years they have spent together and the adventures they have had will forever remind them of the love they share. In St. Catharines, Ontario, Magdalene John, 100 Huntley Street.